Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Ganganasadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Dear Seeker of Truth, welcome. This work that we are going to talk about is one of the most sacred dialogues because it happens between two enlightened beings. One is Ashtavakra, the other is King Janaka, which was Ashtavakra's disciple. So in it you will have a glimpse of the instruction of an enlightened being so that you can achieve liberation, and also the vision of how a liberated being stands, acts, what is his experience. So pay attention to these teachings, fill your heart with surrender, devotion, sacredness, because that is the way to enjoy it the most. May it blossom in your heart, may you also find liberation. Moving on, Ashtavakra Samhita, chapter 16, special instruction. So here is a chapter of special instructions. So why are these special instructions? It's compared to normal instructions. And it is very easy to look upon these teachings, special instructions, for a beginner and think that, okay, so I just bypass all the rest and just embrace these special instructions because this will take me there. But it doesn't work like that. So special instructions is for special seekers. Who is a special seeker? The one who has gone through the normal teachings, has rised with them, has reached a high level. Now all the tools that he has used to reach that high level, he has to drop them one by one so that he may move beyond. So Ashtavakra said, "My child, you may often speak upon various scriptures or hear them, but cannot be established in the self unless you forget them all." So the self cannot be realized by speaking about it, by hearing about it, nothing of that. And this brings still activity to the mind. So it disrupts stillness. So the scriptures, they point towards something, but they are not that something. So this pointing is very important until you reach a high level where this tuning with the self, absorbed in the self, this becomes a possibility, a reality, even as for experiences, not one that comes and then spends a lot of time without coming, but it comes more frequently. So then all these things have to be dropped. And to understand that, only the self exists, nothing else. So all these structures, they are supposed to take you to silence, to stillness, to a higher state of consciousness. And then you are supposed to remain there, remain there. O wise one, you may enjoy or work or practice mental concentration, But your mind will still yearn for your own true nature, which is beyond all objects and in which all desires are extinguished. So what he is saying here is, it doesn't matter what you're doing, enjoying or working or practice mental concentration, but your mind will still yearn for your own true nature, which is beyond all objects and in which all desires are extinguished. So those who are enjoying or working or practicing mental concentration, who are putting their hopes and expectations on that as a means for self-realization, as that which brings self-realization, it doesn't, like it has been explained. It halts illusion. It cuts the power illusion has over you. And this is the important part, to allow this tuning with the self, this absorption to take place. So understanding that mental concentration, meditation is very important, but if you're meditating because I want to realize the self, it doesn't work like that. It is to halt all mental impressions, all mental modifications. This is what it is intended, is to keep silence and stillness so that the absorption takes place. All are unhappy because they exert themselves, but none knows this. The Blessed One attains emancipation through this instruction alone. That Blessed One that understands this previous point that I made, to focus as a means to self-realization instead as a means for silence and stillness. So all are unhappy because they exert themselves, and as they are exerting themselves, there is the dual consciousness. It is operating, being enforced by this struggle, by this exertion. Again, a beginner seeker will think, well, then no exertion should be practiced, and that's not true. Well, it is true, but it's not possible. And what is true? Because usually when a beginner seeker looks at this instruction, he separates his worldly life from his spiritual life, and he brings no exertion into his spiritual life, but continues with all exertion in his worldly life. And there he lives in deception. So yes, no exertion, but first stop the worldly exertion. Then establish yourself, and you will need the spiritual exertion to be able to do this. Then establish yourself in a higher vibration. And as you can maintain it constantly, then exertion is removed. And what is exertion? Because whatever becomes natural over time has no exertion implied. So it's not the effort in itself, it's everything that disturbs stillness. Just remaining there in that. Whatever disturbs this, whatever thought, whatever disturbs it has to be put aside. Happiness belongs to that master idler, whom even the closing and opening of the eyelids is an affliction, to none else. Well, who is the master idler but the self-realized one? And happiness belongs to him. It is him. And as he is in absorption, even the closing and opening of an eyelids is an affliction, more or less. But this is to give the better example even of this stillness, that even opening the eyelids or closing disturbs this stillness, this deep stillness. That happens in a higher vibration. It's like you're taken from within. When the mind is free from such pairs of opposites as this has to be done, and this is not to be done, it becomes indifferent to religious merit, worldly prosperity, sensual enjoyment, and liberation. So they are put all here in the same place. Not sure, let's see. But the order must be observed. When the mind is free from such pairs of opposites, this has to be done, this is not to be done. How will it be free? By magic. So again, a beginner, a naive seeker would look at this, oh, just forget about everything. And this is simply not possible. So when the mind is free from such pairs of opposites, this is to be done, this is not to be done. This is more or less self-realization, or very, very close to it. So a lot of spiritual disciplines had to be undertaken. And it's not about how much time you spend with spiritual disciplines, it's how much fruits you get from it. It's your state, your stillness, your peace. This is what counts. Some achieve it quicker. Some take a lot of time. It doesn't matter. That's not a race. You're progressing from where you stand, but you have to look at real progress and not imaginary one. Not like, okay, I've spent so much time doing this, so I move forward without the fruits. Doesn't work like that. So he already went through detachment, renunciation, for sure. So then he becomes indifferent to religious merit, worldly prosperity, sensual enjoyment, and liberation. But the correct order should be sensual enjoyment, worldly prosperity, religious merit, and finally liberation. Finally. This should be the order. So no, don't make confusions with this. And I'm saying this because it is very common to make these confusions. So to become indifferent takes a very high seeker already, not an idle one, but a high seeker. So this is almost the end of the path. One who abhors sense objects becomes non-attached. And one who covets them becomes attached to them. But he who does not accept or reject is neither unattached nor attached. And this one is the liberated one. So this is to have a glimpse of the state of mind of the liberated one, so that the seeker may use it as a north. So one who abhors sense objects becomes non-attached, and one who covets them becomes attached to them. So the attitude must be different towards this. So one who abhors sense objects becomes non-attached, and one who covets them becomes attached to them. But he who does not accept or reject is neither unattached nor attached. So this is the one that doesn't accept or reject is neither attached or unattached. This is the self-realized one, none else. So this is to give the vision of the self-realized one and versus the normal attitude of the seeker towards sense objects. But in the beginning, it is important to create detachment, then non-attachment, renunciation, to achieve indifference. And this is what it is hinting at, indifference towards everything. As long as desire continues, which is the root of the state of indiscrimination, there will verily be the sense of attachment and aversion, which is the branch and shoot of the tree of samsara. So again, like he explained previously, as long as desire continues, there is bondage. Absence of desire is liberation. So desire here is clearly stated as the root cause of indiscrimination, the opposite of discrimination. So it is blindness. And of course, there will verily be the sense of attachment and aversion, which is the branch and shoot of the tree of samsara. That means that as these are here, you will continue to take rebirths again and again and again and again. Activity begets attachment, and abstention from it, aversion. The man of wisdom is free from the pairs of opposites, like a child, and indeed he lives on like a child. So the man of wisdom is the man of self-realization, because you cannot mistake this with a normal seeker, yet under illusion, just moving around here and there. It's nothing of a spiritual practice. But understanding that that activity brings attachment and abstention from it, aversion. So whatever life is bringing you, you are doing what you have to do as a seeker of truth, but there are always contrasts, opposites coming to you. You should take very good care not to get attached and not to create aversion. But these are beginning stages of training, of self-training. And the man of wisdom is free from the pairs of opposites. The self-realized one is free from the pair of opposites. He has transcended them all, like a child, and indeed lives on like a child. One who is attached to the world wants to renounce it in order to avoid sorrow. But one without attachment is free from sorrow and does not feel miserable even in the world. Again, the self-realized one. So one who is attached to the world wants to renounce it in order to avoid sorrow. Well, that may be the case, but this needs to be understood correctly. As to avoid sorrow, what does this mean? To reach liberation. Because if we look at sorrow as suffering, It is, but in the broader perspective, because a seeker of truth will undergo a lot of pain and a lot of sorrows during his spiritual path. And this is for the eradication of the root cause of suffering. But even that, the desire for liberation can be awakened because of sorrow, but it's not the same thing. It is different from sorrow. So those who are going for liberation just because of sorrow cannot maintain the path, because it is full of sorrows, detachments, and all of that brings a lot of suffering. Transcending the natural forces comes with a lot of pain. So the one who is without attachment is free from sorrow and does not feel miserable even in the world. But this is always to bring a vision of what is the correct alignment. He who has an egotistic feeling even towards liberation and considers even the body as his own is neither a jnani nor a yogin. He only suffers misery. So, repeat it again. He who has an egotistic feeling towards liberation, this is what I usually say about those who are greed motivated. Greed motivated. It's based on greed. Liberation, the quest for liberation. This cannot go far. And considers the body as his own, as his possession, just a body, is neither a jnanin, which is a liberated one, nor a yogin. They are both liberated ones. He only suffers misery. Let even Hara, Hari, or the lotus-born Brahma be your instructor, but unless you forget all, you cannot be established in the self. So even Hara and Hari and Brahma, of course, it would be a blessing to have their instruction, but this is also in the world, in illusion. It's not in the self yet. So that would be a blessing, yes, but there will be a time, even when this instruction is directly imparted, there comes a time where Hara, Hari, or the lotus-born Brahma, or some other deity lets you go, disappears, so that you can move higher. But only when your cup is full of devotion, flooding devotion, not before that. So unless you forget all, you cannot establish in the self. So unless you close your eyes to the world, you will not be established in the self. But without the purity of the mind, without full detachment, without the heart full, flooding with devotion, if you forget all, you just get depressed. It doesn't bring liberation. Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.